Hi, this is Matt Johnson with Viral Marketing, and I'm excited to welcome you. This is a very special interview with Chris Angel of ThinkRealEstateTraining.com. Welcome, Chris. How you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, and we're going to be talking about a very cool topic. We're going to get into a lot of stuff, but we're mainly talking about how to find your optimum selling style, and that really is Chris's specialty. And Chris, let's start off first by just giving a little bit of background on where you came from in the real estate community, and now you're into private coaching,
Sure.
and then we'll get into that process of how you help people to find that optimum selling style.
Absolutely. In 2001, I got into real estate after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad. I figured, I should learn how to invest in real estate. And while I was there, I figured I should build a business out of it. And I launched into my career, I think as any entrepreneur would, with tons of bravado and, like a vision to make millions in a matter of months. And within 3 months, I had completely depleted my savings. It wasn't until 9 months into my career that I actually closed my first sale, and I was, I could say I was disillusioned, but I was hungry enough to get to my vision that I kept going. My wife was like, "Dude, why don't we have money and we should get other jobs?" And so, that being said, thankfully, I had enough determination and just sheer stubbornness to stick it out. And I would say within 3 to 4 years of my career, I was in the top 5% of my MLS. And 6.5 years in, I was recruited away to become a CEO for a real estate company on the east side of my state. So it was interesting because I realized in the selling of real estate that there were a lot of things that didn't feel right. And I think I was successful sheerly because I was stubborn and willing to stick it out. And it was funny too, because in the middle of my success, I didn't feel successful. You know what I mean? I hated the sound of my phone. I had anxiety at night for deals that would fall apart, and here I am from the outside looking in. I was successful, but it didn't feel that way. I hated lead generation, right? So when I went to run a company, I got this perspective that you don't get when you're in the trenches. I got to see 200 agents in my office running their businesses, and I would say most of them resented all the things that they felt like they had to do in lead generation. Right? And I could see how they felt like they were supposed to do it, and they kept telling themselves, well, oh, I should just get out of my comfort zone, and yet they still hated it, and they just didn't get traction with lead generation. And I kept feeling like something's missing. These are intelligent, brilliant human beings that aren't getting traction. And it's because, and I started to develop what I share now, started then in terms of my perspective. Like, each of us have unique gifts and perspective. If we were just given permission in life to build from there, our experience of our business would be so much different than how most of us in real estate relate to our careers right now.
Yeah, and that was one of the key things that we were talking just before we went on the air about where you scale from and why it's so crucial that you scale from the right place, that you scale the right things. And
Yep.
you brought out, and I want you to talk more about this before we get into some other things. So just share briefly, kind of your perspective on prospecting and why you can't base an entire business off of something you hate doing.
Yeah, the bottom line of that is you just, if your business has been built on phone calls, for example, which is where most of, I think, the pushback comes from. We as human beings don't like to make phone calls because it doesn't feel congruent with who we are as human beings. We don't like it done to us. Even if it's a referral-based call, you're calling your database, great. Hey, who do you know that wants to buy or sell or invest in real estate? I think that script is tough for a lot of us because it doesn't add value to the person I'm calling. That script is about me and what you can do for me. So I feel like a taker when I call you. And I think the reason you can't scale a business on that is because it is a very short-term conversation and it doesn't add value. And if it doesn't add value and it doesn't feel congruent, we won't continue to do it.
Yeah.
We'll burn out. It won't scale. And it's not sustainable. So prospecting, I'm not saying that prospecting, let me add this too, I'm not saying prospecting doesn't work. It works. But here's the thing, it's like, as with any cause and effect, you do enough action of one thing and you'll get a return. So that's what prospecting is. I just think in this day and age, in 2015, prospecting has changed and the consumer's preferences have changed.
Yeah.
We have to change from being a prospecting-based industry to a value-giving industry. We've got to find ways to make a difference in people's lives rather than just calling and asking for referrals. Or, oh, by the way, who do you know? It's not that those don't work, it's that they don't add value.
Yeah. So over the time, you kind of develop this philosophy, and this is what you teach now. Obviously,
Correct.
that developed over years of experience, but then what was it, 5, 6 years of direct observation of 200 agents in your office and watching the struggles that went through?
Yeah, 5 years in that. Yeah, that's right. 5 years there. Plus, in watching them for 5 years, I saw all the things in my 6.5 years of selling and why I resented it.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and so now what you're doing, you're taking people through kind of a progression, and that's what I kind of want to get into is a little preview of
Yeah.
what's going to be covered in this series of hangouts, and we'll talk about more of what's to come, and we're going to have some guests on that are going to share their experiences as well, and there's going to be a lot of things that we cover. But in
Yeah.
this first one, it's going to almost be kind of an overview of what you teach and the progression that you take your clients through, and I want people to get kind of an insight into that. So let's start a little bit kind of at the beginning. Let's say that you were to work with somebody one-on-one, which is part of what you do.
Yeah.
So take me through that progression. We talked about, people have different strengths, and some people they're naturally good prospectors, and good for them. Real estate will be very easy for them.
Yeah.
Um, Hit the phones, know your ratios, and you're good. So let's say for the rest of us, which is a lot of people, different personality types.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people out there that they're just never going to be in that category. So how do you kind of evaluate and start them at the point where you find out what their strengths are?
Yeah. I think I will always start with, in order for you to sustain, let me back up. Here's what I think has to happen. We have to be content creators first and real estate agents second, or content creators first, mortgage brokers second, or whatever your industry is second, okay? Because it's in creating content that people want to interact with, um, is where the engagement happens. Leads show up inside of engagement. If you don't have engagement, you don't get leads. That's the principle we're building from, right? So in order to build a strategy into that, we've got to figure out what content, what topics do you want to talk about so that we can find other people that want to engage with that conversation, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I start from. Now, the challenge is people don't want to talk about real estate. That is not a conversation the consumer wants to talk about. And yet, most of our efforts as real estate agents or mortgage brokers is about real estate. You look at your 33 touches and your marketing campaigns and your core messaging, and most of it's about real estate. And the problem is the consumer doesn't want to engage with that. So, go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, we all know the stats. I mean, we're talking about 6, 7, 8 years between when they're thinking about real estate, really. I mean, and when
That's right.
when they're outside of that mentality, they're really like it's kind of the blinders are on.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, congratulations. So somebody for 6 to 18 months is looking for a house, and in that moment they might be interested in a real estate statistic, but the day after they close on a house, NAR would say they move on average every 7 to 9 years. So for 7 years, what do you talk about?
Mm-hmm.
More real estate statistics? It's not relevant. They don't want to talk about that. So what we're talking about is building a tribe. We have to build a tribe of people, and a tribe starts when you have an idea that you're all gathering around. Like if I said Tony Robbins has built a great tribe. His tribe gathers around the idea of unlimited power or unleashing your power or personal power, right? Like that's said different ways. It's the same thing that they all gather for. What do you gather people around? So when I meet with a client, back to your question, like if you and I were sitting down and you're a client and we're figuring out what do we do, I need to figure out what could you talk about all day long and never get tired of. And please make it something that's not inside your industry.
Right.
Please don't talk about, I could talk about houses all day long, right? It's got to be something people want to engage. Now, you could say it could be interior. I've worked with people that they could talk about interior design all day long. Fine. That's very closely related to houses. I've talked to people who could talk about fishing all day long, hunting, wine. People could talk about wine all day long. One of my clients loves golf and is talking about golf. Another client is talking about family. The one we'll do on our next hangout loves talking about school. She has a passion for kids and how school districts run, and her school district is not running well, and she's being very involved in that. That is where we start. Is if you have a topic you could talk about all day long, you will continue to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So if we build your lead generation efforts on that, then it's sustainable because you'll continue to have content forever, right?
Yeah, and it really comes down to, it seems to me like you're kind of trying to help them find that sweet spot between their hobbies or their passions, and then what people want to hear, and
Yes.
what people in the right economic and demographic groups that are
Yep.
similar to that person want to hear. So you can find that
Yeah.
sweet spot where,
That's right.
like golf is a great example, wine is a great example, where it's going to attract a
Mm-hmm.
little bit higher end clientele because they are, they're hobbies that take some money to get into.
Yep.
So you've got this great market of people that want to hear, they want to engage with somebody about this type of content, and it
Right.
almost self-selects you into a group of people that can afford to buy homes, which is fantastic.
Yep.
You
That's
know?
right. You can get really strategic with this, right? Like we have all sorts of different topics that we might be passionate about that we could talk about all day long, but one or two of those topics are going to be a better fit for what we're trying to do in our profession in terms of our business goals and our economic goals. Some of those interests or passions will overlap better with what we're trying to accomplish from professionally.
Yeah,
So,
and so moving on from let's say you take on a client and you really get that instilled into them, the idea that they have to be a content creator and almost think of themselves like a brand or a little mini media company,
that's right.
bef- and salesperson second.
That's
So they
right.
make that mental shift. Now the next step is to kind of figure out how are they going to get their message out there. They know what they want to say. How are they going to say it? How are they going to get that message to their tribe now?
Right. Um, well, before that can happen, once you have a topic that you're passionate about, there's got to be a way that you capture this creation of content. Like, in other words, you've got to find a way to I think the book I read years ago was called Rework. That's what got my mind thinking about this idea. And Rework talks about capturing your sawdust, like repurposing your sawdust, your waste product. So when the Ford Motor Company makes cars, there's all this metal shavings that in sawdust that basically happens as a result of producing cars. They took that and turned it into charcoal. And Kingsford Charcoal is a Ford Motor Company brand. That's where it came from. They created a whole other economic model from their waste product, right? From a service industry standpoint, because we're not making cars, our byproduct, our sawdust, is the brilliant stuff that comes out of our mouth. The stuff that we say, the places where we get passionately fired up in life and show up sort of as a leader or an opinionated human, that's the stuff we want to capture because that's what shows up as leadership. So if you love wine, let's use wine as an example. I always love that example because it's left field, has nothing to do with selling houses. So if I'm passionate about wine and there are certain wines I like and I have, and I tasting wine, all that stuff, if I can find a format in which I can talk about it. So there's usually two formats people fall into. They either fall into a written format, like I want to write about wine, or they're verbal. They want to talk about stuff. Most of my clients that are introverts like to write, and my clients that are extroverts like to talk. So those are typically two places to start to look for where you would create content. Writing's pretty self-explanatory, right? Because you're just going to find ways to, it could be a blog post, it could be an article, you're going to write about it. But for those that are verbal, it's finding the right format verbally. Like, do you want to talk direct to camera? Do you want to have an interview kind of like you and I are doing? Do you want to teach a live class and sort of record it? The point is you could do a networking event. You could meet with if we're talking wine, a sommelier or some type of wine steward to talk about their wine. Gary Vaynerchuk did this with Wine Library TV. Like when he blew up his stuff, he was tasting wine and describing it in layman's terms for people, and he blew up his wine sales. Once you find the format that makes you feel strong, see, the problem is we won't also do lead generation if we don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm making phone calls and I don't like that format, I won't keep doing it. So we have to find a format in which we feel strong doing it. This format for me right now with you on an interview like this, one of the reasons I hired you guys and I like you guys is because this format really works for me to capture stuff that comes out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Versus when I go direct to camera and I have to turn the camera on and I have to stare into my camera, I look like an idiot. I just stare, and it takes me 20 takes to get anything out, and it still doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
So once we can find a format like this that we like, then it's about just sharing my opinion about the passionate topic I have. And as I do that, if you can record it and then push it out, that's what it takes, is recording it. Now, once we record our format, it's now about syndication. I think one of the bullet points we put on this hangout was how do we decrease our to-do list for lead generation? Because I think we are exhausted by all the things we're supposed to do for lead generation. And what I see is the older I get, the more I get minimalistic, like reduce the amount of work you have to do. Do one thing like this and push it to many platforms. Stop doing a separate post and a blog post and a Facebook post and a Twitter. All that stuff is separate. Why don't we make it all one thing? Capture content and then push it to all those platforms so that we can create engagement, because leads happen inside of engagement, right? So that's it. That's where I take people.
I want you to talk a little bit more about that idea right there, because I think probably the struggle that most agents either coming in or even agents that have just been in the business for 5-10 years, guys that they're experienced prospectors, they know how to do it, they just suck it up and get it done. You know, it's one of those, it's almost a pride thing in the industry where it's, you know, we all know we don't like it, but
Yeah.
the ones that are the best are the ones that suck it up and do it anyway and do it more and do it better than you. So let's say you're, you know, whatever position that you're in, you're looking for this alternative, this, you know, this way to generate leads, but you know that, I mean, prospecting is one way to generate engagement. You're picking up the phone and you're talking to somebody, but there's a way to do that incorrectly too. You can do prospecting without much engagement. You know,
Absolutely.
There's that human connection. The people that are really good at
Yeah.
prospecting are those ones that can instantly generate warmth and a connection over the phone.
Yeah.
So even there, it's still that, even within prospecting, that principle is true. So I guess, can you elaborate on that a little bit, and just I guess where that came from and why it's so important that you have to have that engagement in order for you to actually have real lead generation, because that's such a key point.
I think where it came from, I just think my own frustration of when I was making calls in my own selling career, like it didn't feel right to me. But look, I've seen other people who are good, like you said, good at the phones, and they'll get it done, but it's not as efficient. Like versus it. So here's an example: if you had 10,000 people in a database, well, let's do it even smaller than that. If you had 1,000 people in a database that were just generic, they're all humans, but that's about what they have in common, right? Versus 100 people that all loved wine, and you were going to make prospecting calls, you're going to make outbound phone calls. Which one would you get more engagement with? If you're going to call 100 people and talk about wine, or you're going to call 1,000 people and talk about referrals, or who do you know that wants to buy or sell, or hey, just checking in, like, you know, a common one is just, hey, just checking in, wanted to see if you need anything this month, like what's happening, whatever. If you're going to call, which one do you think you'd get more engagement with? You'd get more engagement from the 100 than you would the 1,000, because we actually have something to talk about.
Yeah.
It's more efficient. Now, here's the cool part about tribes, right? Once you have leadership inside a tribe, I'm not saying don't service business outside of those people. I'm not saying if somebody calls you that doesn't love wine, not to take that listing, right? What's cool is you go build relationships, spend your time, money, and energy building engagement with a tribe. Then the tribe goes out to their friends and family members who maybe don't like wine, and they tell them about you. This is the power of a tribe, is it's one to many, not one to one. And most of our prospecting efforts have been built on, I have to call this person, then I call that person, then I work through my entire A's, and then I have to work through my B's, and this is how we make our call list. But when you build relationship with a tribe, your tribe ends up telling other people about you.
Yeah, and just to answer, I don't know if you can hear me better now, but somebody mentioned that they could barely hear me on the Hangout. I'm not sure what was up, so I made
sounds like
a couple
it
of
went higher on my
adjustments.
end.
So hopefully that's better. But anyway, so the thing about like creating content that you're passionate about, it gives somebody a reason to talk about you. If all you talk about is real estate, you better have the best stats in the world, because otherwise nobody's going to go out to their friends and tell somebody about you.
Right.
Now, if you're the realtor that talks about wine or golf, and you're sharing content that people find interesting and funny and whatever, and all the things that make things sticky online, if you're the one that's sharing that on a specific niche, they're going to talk about you, and they have a valid reason to tell people about you.
Yeah. That's the challenge with, look, the challenge with my strategy, my suggestion, right, is that people are afraid to do it because it polarizes people. If I just talk about wine, then what happens in our mind as agents is we go, but what about all the people who don't like wine? Like, are they gonna? What if they hate alcohol? Are they gonna hate me then, or are they gonna go away, or they're not gonna engage with my content if I talk about wine?
Yeah.
And so what we see, instead of seeing the opportunity of building a tribe, what we actually see is the scarcity of like, oh, what if I miss opportunity? And so as a result, what most of us do is we just say generic things to everybody and nobody cares because we're afraid of losing people. When in reality, what's actually happening is we're not creating engagement anyway. And it would be better if you focused on 50 true fans or 100 true fans with a specific topic and built traction there.
Yeah, and I think that's been an issue in the real estate industry for a long time, is the idea, just that reluctance to turn away anyone. Right. And it really is. You hit the nail on the head. It's a scarcity mindset is what it is. You don't believe the pie is big enough to where you can zero in on a specific slice of it and really build your business off of people that believe the same things as you and have the same interests as you and genuinely want to hear what you have to say. It's the same reason people don't come right out and say, hey, I'm a buyer specialist. Yeah. I love working with buyers. I don't want to work with any sellers. I just want to work with buyers. Well, we're taught, from right off the bat when you get into the business, your brokers will try to beat that out of you. No, you take any business you can get from any source, and when somebody asks you what you do, you say, I help people buy, sell, and invest. Great. That's everybody and nobody all at the same time.
Yeah, and I think I'm taking it one step further. Let's get outside of identifying ourselves as buyers agents or listing agents even, and let's just go, like, if I could draw a line on the computer screen right now, left to right as a timeline, where most of your competition, where agents compete for business, is let's use my hand here, right? So left to right, I'm guessing, is this way. Mm-hmm. At my hand is the point of sale. This represents where people in life choose to list or buy a property, right here. Okay. And where agents compete for this business is like right here at the point of that decision. What I'm suggesting is, what if we could get ahead of it and we came way over here? We built a relationship and a tribe with people where they depended on and respected our leadership of an idea, so that when it came time for them to buy or sell, they didn't even need to interview anybody else because we had established our leadership in that relationship. Yeah. You know who does it? Sometimes people will ask me, hey, Chris, so who in real estate's doing this? Like, I like what you're saying, but who in real estate's actually doing this? And you know what my answer is? Nobody. Nobody. Now, listen, everybody outside of real estate, go look at the rest of the world, and they're already doing this. For some odd reason, our industry always lags by 5 to 10 years until we figure it out. What I'm telling you right now is what the rest of the world is doing. And if we don't listen and catch up, we're going to get left behind by the consumer. Yeah. You're going to keep using your referral script, and you're going to be wondering why you have to work so hard to convince a buyer or seller to work with you. Right? If you build a relationship over here from a tribe, then what happens is you don't have to compete for the business when it comes time to list or sell or buy, right?
Yeah, it's a total non-issue.
It's a non-issue. I had a client last week who sent out an email about the client that does school district content, right? Talks about school districts and what's happening. She sent out this email, and a client had her come to her house and list her house. She didn't even have to interview for the listing because of the relationship and the respect that she had won from her perspective about schools. You know who does this well outside of real estate? Is Dave Ramsey. Dave Ramsey, from a financial perspective, goes out and tells people how to get out of debt. He has a passionate opinion about what to do. He broadcasts that, syndicates that to the world, right? And then what happened was, over time, then he said, hey, if you guys are thinking about buying a house, you really need to go through some of my agents because I'm going to connect you with an agent. And that was what the birth of Dave Ramsey Leads, right? So now Dave Ramsey finds all these agents that he screens and filters and just basically sends his financial peace people to those agents. They don't really question the agent. They just, Dave recommended him, so I'm going to use him. Yeah. That is the principle at play. Yeah. Because Dave built a tribe.
Yeah, and that Dave's a good example of that because, and this is the next piece that we want to get into, is the consistency component of all this. Is that once you take somebody through that progression of now we have your message, now we have your format or the kind of package or the medium that you want to send your message out into the world. The question is now, are you going to stick with it?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that's why it's so important to build from a topic that you're passionate about and could talk about all day long, and a format that leaves you feeling strong. Because if you have those two pieces,
Yeah.
you'll continue to do it.
Yeah, the
If you don't have
consistency is
those two
much easier.
pieces, yeah, then all you're left with doing is either creating a marketing piece or making a prospecting call.
Yeah.
And neither of those are exciting.
Yeah, and so if you start right, then everything kind of flows downhill from there. So you pick something that you're really passionate about that you can talk, that you can talk about all day long, pick the right format, then you're able to do it consistently, and the consistency part is what kind of takes care of the next piece, which is bringing more people into your world that identify with that passion. Because right now, you can probably go through a database, and everybody, if they're following mentally along with this, are probably going, yeah, I can talk about this over here, but it's gonna, like, it doesn't speak to this group of people and this group of people. And so what you need is you need more people into your funnel that will respond and resonate with what you're gonna put out there into the world. So how do you help clients do that and just bring people into their world?
Yeah, I mean, let's just call them tribe members. You need more tribe members, right? And ultimately, so people will say, so should I just forget my existing database? Well, no. I mean, in a perfect world, if you could find a topic that resonated with a large percentage of your existing database, then start talking about that, okay? Absent of that, if there's a different topic you really want to talk about, then just keep doing your existing stuff you're doing for your current database. Just keep doing that. But don't put any more effort, time, or money into that. Go start building a conversation over here. If it's about wine, for example, then as I talk about it, other people gravitate to it. I could do Facebook ads, Facebook posts. I could do blog posts. I could go to networking events. I could be part of a wine club. There's different things that we're taught to do in real estate already that if we just did them inside of a context of our idea or our topic, they would actually resonate more. So this gets into list building. I think one of the things you need to start doing then is building your list of people who want to talk about that. And in order to do that, one, you need to have consistent rhythm of creating content about it. And on top of that, then, you need to find a particular opt-in piece, a resource, something that people would give you their name and email address for. So, for example, if I said, hey, gang, look, one of the things I love to do is do some wine tasting, and I love Cabernet, and I found 10 cabs under $20 that would score over 90 points. And if you'd like that list, drop your name and email address here, and I'd be happy to send it to you. When you find that, now, is that offer valuable to people who don't like wine? No. Is it valuable to people who do like wine? Yes. Because as a wine lover, I'm always looking for good wines that I can add to my cellar, right, in terms of what I'm drinking. So that people would give you their name and email address for that. And once they opt, it's called an opt-in, right? Once they opt in for your email list, now I just need to send them. I just need to keep them in touch with the conversation that I continually create through capturing this content, right? And here's the other thing that just jumped in my head, Matt, is this is not. In business, there are short plays and long plays, right? The short play is what gets me business today, and the long play is what I build a business on. What I'm talking about is a long play, and our damn industry is so drunk on the short play, they can't raise their vision far enough to see what we're trying to create. They're so addicted to what I have to produce right now that they are stuck in a rut of short play strategies, and that you can't scale from that. So what we're talking about is the long play, and that is when you create content like this and you build a tribe, you now have something that you can I don't want to say retire on, but you have something that becomes predictable revenue, right?
Yes.
So I don't know. Do you want to switch to the short play? Because I have a thought on that.
Yeah, well, yeah, let's get
that?
into that, and then I want to get into just a little bit before we in the few minutes that we have left, I want to talk about kind of bridging and how to bridge that gap between just putting the content out and turning them into leads.
Okay, great. So that's the short play. Here's the short play in this strategy. When you, I call it bridging. So as you're talking to wine lovers, for example, about wine, and you're creating content around that, at times then you're already earning their attention, because you're in a conversation they want to be a part of. But bridging then is bringing up your industry. So I'm talking about wine, and let's say in my next email out to the people on my email list, I say, hey gang, last night I was at a seller's house. We were going through some market stats on what they could sell their house for. It's pretty cool because they were pleasantly surprised. They bought in 2010. Their house had appreciated way beyond where they thought they could sell. But as we're talking, the guy shares with me, we start talking about wine, and he shared these 3 cabs that he loves with me, and we started talking about wine. And now I move my conversation into wine. There was no direct ask in that email. I didn't say, hey gang, do you want to know what your house is worth? I didn't, but there was so much embedded in that. I suggested that the market has appreciated. I suggested that homeowners are surprised by what their house could be worth, right, in today's market. But then I moved right past it as if not to say anything, and it's a pattern interrupt because people are expecting you to go sell yourself, and we're not. It's indirect. Now, I think when you earn people's trust this way by giving them valuable content, at times then you can do a direct ask. So I think you can say, like, guys, look, for the last 3 weeks I've been sending you great content on wine. I love this. And in fact, the stories you've been sharing back with me and the wines you love have been awesome. Here's what I want you to know. The market, if you are interested in real estate, the market has shifted. Because it's important, I want you to know, like, you need to do stuff now if you're going to sell this spring. You can start to do some direct calls to action with a tribe because you've earned it. Dave Ramsey can say to his tribal members of Financial Peace, guys, you need to buy my course, or you need to come to my seminar, because he's earned it. So,
yeah, and it's the passion and the consistency over time is what builds you the right. It earns you that right to ask.
That's right. But and over time, what we're doing is we're bridging to specific content, right? That is about what we do as a profession.
Right. Yeah. So then you start to blend. You hit a point where you build up the trust. Then you start to blend in, and you give them a peek of, okay, this is what I do. This is another aspect of who I am. And then you can talk more congruently just about your life in general and how that all interrelates with the topic that you're passionate about.
That's right. Yeah. There's a great book. If people want to do some more research on this type of thought process, there's a book by Brendon Burchard called The Millionaire Messenger. And he basically talks about how the expert industry is basically people sharing their perspective on life or on something they're an expert at or something they're good at, they're passionate about. And then how to build a tribe that way, right? There's a part in the middle of the book where he talks about how to monetize it, like creating courses and books and stuff. I think for people on this call, you don't need to worry about that. Your economic model is what you do for a profession. You bridge, you be an expert about something, and then you bridge to selling a house, you bridge to a loan, you bridge to wealth management, whatever your profession is, that's what you bridge to for economic engine.
You don't need a back end. You don't need a product to sell. You don't need coaching. You don't need any of the stuff that these other guys have to do.
That's right.
Yeah, you have your profession.
That's right. I would tell people, read The Millionaire Messenger with this in mind. Like, I'm going to build a business like Brendon Burchard's talking about, and then I'm going to bridge to real estate when it's time to do that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And we were talking a little bit, again, before we went live, and I want you to share a little bit about what your vision is for this. So part of the reason that we're doing these hangouts together is because you want to kind of open this up. Like, you've been doing a lot of like one-on-one coaching and where you're working very intensely with one person, but you want to open it up so that you're able to bring the same message to more people at the same time. And that's part of what the hangouts are going to be. So, for example, like on this one right now, you can ask questions and I can bring them to Chris, which you're welcome to do right now through the Q&A app, or you can put them right on the Google Plus page, and we still have time to answer questions today. But in the future, when we bring guests on, you'll have a chance to ask questions, and we'll get answers from both Chris and the guest. And then, Chris, tell us a little bit about more of the group coaching and kind of what your vision is for that, and why you think that's going to be really helpful for people.
Yeah, I really resisted creating group coaching because I didn't want to. I feel like so much of what I do one-on-one with people is so custom because I'm so. It matters to me, the individual. Who you are matters to me. So I'm trying to help you create something that's specific to you. And so I didn't want to bastardize that process, right? And to me, group coaching sort of felt like I would be missing that. It's only been because people keep asking for. They resonate so much with this message, and how do I build an authentic business? that I realized I can help more people if I do something like this. So how it works is basically it's a month-to-month type of group coaching. Like, you just stay in until you don't have value anymore. And I, on the front end of that group coaching, I create some distinctions and I deliver more content about how to do this. And as we move through that program, or we move through that group coaching together, it begins to evolve into what the group has questions about and how their businesses are evolving. So in the beginning, it's sort of front-loaded with this strategy and the how-to of this strategy. And as we move through, it becomes like this, it's a tribe. I mean, it's what it becomes, right? It's this group together.
Practical application, yeah.
That's right. And they're gathered around an idea called how do we scale an authentic business? And they begin to help one another like tribes do. And I'm answering questions as people have them. So that, in essence, that's what it is. I'm launching at the end of March, and we can send stuff out about that in the future. But that's when it'll launch. And
yeah, and we'll keep it at that. I mean, I don't want the Hangouts to be like to come off like a sales pitch or anything like that. So, but I wanted people to know about that that's part of why we're doing the Hangouts and what you're coming out with. Because there's so much. I mean, there's so much that we can go into. It's hard to cover it all. And,
it is.
I mean, even in an hour-long hangout, if we're doing an interview with somebody, it's just going to be tough to get to everything and to get to everyone's questions. So, like, the group coaching is that format where, yes, it's front-loaded. They can get a lot of the system kind of that you teach up front, but then there's going to be that opportunity then for them to ask specific questions about their business we may never get to on these hangouts.
That's right.
So, which is exciting.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the next hangout, what people can expect to learn. So you've got a specific client in mind, and I want you to tell them, give them an idea of who that is and what we're going to be discussing on the next hangout.
Well, so this client of mine that's an educator, her name's Teresa, and she's in Austin, Texas, and she has her own brokerage. And I've known her for years. We only started coaching within the last year, and she just wasn't being consistent in her lead generation. She knew, right, that she should be doing it, and she has an intense desire for cash flow, as I think any entrepreneur does, right? Like, but without consistent action, then she was always left with like, well, I'll just try to throw something together, or I'll make some FSBO calls, or I'll do some expired calls, or whatever I can do right now to generate cash flow, to spike her business, right? But she didn't have any passion about that, so we started working through like, what are you passionate about? What topic could you talk about? School kept coming up. In her previous life, what's funny is sometimes in her previous life are where the clues live. She was an educator. So we started looking there like she was already being involved in the school board, and she actually was running for a position on the school board in Austin. And I was like, look at all this stuff in your life you already talk about all the time. And people already see you as a leader there. So we started talking about like, let's have you talk about that. Are there other parents that are interested and concerned about what's happening in the school district? She's like, yes. I'm like, great. So your message would resonate with a particular tribe? Yes, it would. Great. Then we went to, like I said, what format? She would prefer to write, right? She's a great writer. She would prefer to write. She can get it done really quickly. So she starts writing, and she's been cranking out content. She's going to share with us what she calls it an editorial calendar. But she basically, what worked for her was putting together what her content was going to be, so she didn't have to guess about it. And she's been consistently cranking out for the last month. She's been consistently cranking out content and loving it and getting engagement from it. And if you look prior to this month, she wasn't doing anything consistently from a lead gen standpoint, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, they had a successful business last year, but it was all because of sheer effort, not because of a consistent place to create content from where she felt strong. And I think her attitude of her business is like, how she relates to her business is less stressed now because she's enjoying what she's doing. So
yeah, if you're going to be in real estate for 5-10 years from now, who doesn't want to enjoy the ride?
What if we could look back on a 10, 20, 30-year career in this industry and not just say we sold a lot of houses, but say we actually made a difference? Like that career was worthy of my life. And I think when we connect with a topic and a group of people around that topic, that's where it actually creates legacy. It's what creates purpose in the work that we do. And so just simply selling another house doesn't have enough purpose for us to feel good about what we're doing. So
Yeah, well, that's a lot.
It is a lot.
So,
It is a
yeah,
lot.
I'm excited for this series of Hangouts. I really can't wait. It's going to be very, very cool to see, and it's going to be cool to bring people on that are where we can actually see the progression that
Yeah,
they've taken, what type of content they're putting out there, and really get into the nuts and bolts kind of practical side of how they're doing it, so
that's right.
that people can see exactly what that looks like and how they can fit it into their schedule. Because I know from the outside looking in, if you're prospecting every day and then you're running appointments and then you're managing your transactions, like this feels like something that you have to stack on. But
Right.
really, this is the key to being in business 5 to 10 years from now and enjoying your life. It has to be
Right.
done, and you can fit it in, and you can talk about how we can do that. But so we're coming to the end of our time today. I don't think we have any questions that are coming through the Q&A app that I can see. So we'll have to save, the next time, obviously, right through here on the Q&A app on the Google Plus page, you can type in your questions so that we can bring them to Chris and get them answered live on air. So, but is there anything, Chris, that you want to leave us with before we sign off today? Anything that you want people to really take away from this specific Hangout today?
I mean, it's such a can of worms. I mean, there's so much stuff, right? But I think that in order for our industry to evolve with the consumer, I think we have to start being human beings with real interest. I think what makes reality TV so exciting for some people is that we get to see real people in their real lives, or what has us create a human connection with our favorite authors or whatever is that they're real human beings. And I think we have to come off that way and we have to be more transparent with who we are as human beings and our own interests. And when we can build connection over those things, I think the consumer stops relating to us like we're just an agent that's replaceable, and they start relating to us like a human being that makes their life better.
Yeah.
And so that's what this is about, is reinventing an industry and giving you a place to build from that feels strong and feels right to you, so you're proud of the business you build and it produces great results.
Yeah, and that goes back to what you talk about on scaling from the right place.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and we did have one last question that came in right here at the end. Molly asked, is this recorded? Will we get a copy? That's the fantastic part about Google Hangouts. So the cool thing is right here on this event page, this video that you're watching right now is still going to live on this page. It's recorded. It's on YouTube, and it's free. Basically, you can go and check this out and send anyone that you want to the link to this page, and they'll be able to watch the recorded version of this Hangout. So.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Chris, it was a pleasure.
Thanks, Matt.
I'm looking forward to the series, and we will see you guys on the next Hangout.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.